Welcome, friends and family, to this year's UVA men's basketball preview. Halloween is over. If you are getting Christmas decorations out, you are a freak. This year is shaping out to be a mystery bag, so hopefully we can get you a little more familiar with the guys and what the state of UVA basketball is. If you're not really familiar with what's going on at UVA basketball, I've got a good friend here with me, Sean. Our third compadre is out this week. I think he's getting a body part removed. I don't know. We miss him anyway. So Sean, what is going on with UVA basketball? Where did we leave it off last year?
Yeah, we are 3 days away from our first Virginia basketball game of the season. You know, traditionally, as a Virginia fan, we get to this point in the year and we're like, oh, thank goodness, we got something to look forward to. And that's basketball season. And in my perspective, that has not changed. I'm still excited for basketball season. I'm rocking my jersey. I'm rocking my hat. I'm ready to go. I'm looking for mini game packages. I'm trying to be in JPJ as much as I can this year. And we got some excitement around this program. We got some clouds over the program. We're trying to figure out what's going on, and some uncertainties. But overall, I think we're in a good space, and I can't wait to see what this 2024-2025 men's basketball team does.
It's definitely exciting. I think last year was, looking back, was an interesting type of year because we had a hodgepodge team, and we didn't know what to expect. And I think we have the same type of team this year, but I think it's going to be a little better. That being said, there's a little drama coming into this year, but I want to, again, where did we leave it off last year?
Yeah, so last year we finished the season at 23-11, which was, not terrible, not great, but we finished 13-7 in the ACC.
It's a nice,
good enough for a third place finish.
It's a nice feeling when 23-11?
Yep, 23-11.
When 23-11 is a kind of year.
When you had a program builder like Tony Bennett, that's what happens. You're not satisfied with 23 wins when you're used to 30 wins a season. So we got a little adjustment coming off of that. But we did make it to the NCAA tournament. We had a forgettable run with a first four out loss. We didn't end up in any of the rankings at the end of the year, which we didn't deserve it the way we played.
What's interesting about last year was that we ended up third in the ACC, and by some people they say we had a bad year, but third in the ACC is a good year. So it was a really strange season last year.
Yeah, we went through some highs and some lows. We didn't have the same defense that we typically see out of this Virginia program. I think we struggled because we had a lot of newcomers and we're trying to figure out where they were coming in, where they're going to fit. And I think that is what kind of threw this team off. You're trying to, in that Tony Bennett blocker mover and pack line defense, it takes a lot of time to gel. And it took a lot of time for some of these guys to gel last year. So
another interesting thing about last year was when we lost.
we did not leave it when it was a game we didn't play well. We showed you, and that's what really I think a lot of people remembered us for is we didn't lose by 5 or 6 points. We lost by 20 plus a lot of times. So when it rains, it pours, and sometimes you just can't buy a bucket, and that's what happened to Virginia a lot last year. That was the tail of the tape. So, but enough about last year. We're looking at this 2024 team, 2025 team, so we're excited. So,
if you didn't know, Tony Bennett resigned from his position a few weeks out before the season began, and Ron Sanchez was announced as the interim head coach of this basketball team. I believe that we only have 2 starters returning. That's who?
Yep, we got 2 starters returning, which is Isaac McNeely and Andrew Rohde coming back for their junior years here at Virginia.
Yeah, so Rohde, a lot of mixed reviews with him. I mean, he
struggled.
He talked about up and downs. I don't think I wasn't a Rohde guy. I think Bennett must have saw something in him, but I mean, he had some games where he came through, but again, for what we need to get out of him and as much playing time as he got, not really sure.
He should have
I'm
lost his
not really,
starting
yeah.
spot earlier. I think he was mainly kept in for defense because he struggled offensively, couldn't buy a bucket half the time, wasn't a great 3-point shooter, and only finished the season averaging 4.3 points a game. So
Yeah, it boiled down to his size and what he had to offer. I think 6'6", 200. So I guess he's not quite as tall.
but I think, not to get us off track this early, but I think that falls into the pack line D, where if you find a guy who plays the defense really well, you're going to sacrifice his offense. And I think that was part of the mix-up we had last year. Is we had too many guys who could play the defense, and we were trying to force to play the defense, and then offensively they couldn't get it going.
So it looks like he probably lost his starting spot coming into this year. So, Sean, who do you have as your starting five?
My starting five, I'll go through my five, and then we'll kind of break them down individually. So I think we're going to use Dai Dames as a I think he's going to be our starting one guard, transfer coming in from Kansas State. I think IMAC, obviously, he's the only one who I really think has locked up his position as a starter on this team. A sharpshooter coming back for year 3 for the Who's, so I like him at the 2. Then at the 3, I really like our TJ Powers coming in, another transfer coming over from Duke. So it's nice to see us land a ACC rival transfer. So I got him playing at the 3. And then you have Saunders coming in at the 4, rounding out the top 5. I think we got Blake Buchanan coming back for another year, who played a lot as a freshman last year, and I think he's going to be I think he's going to grow. I think he's growing a lot in the offseason. I'm really excited to see how he takes his next step forward.
Yeah, so I have the same starting five as you. I'm not 100% confident that my starting five is the starting five. I think there's 2 players that stand out to me so far that may be starters. That's Christian Bliss at the point guard position. He redshirted last year. So he had 1 year with the team, and another red shirt with Anthony Robinson at the center position. So I'm not quite sure. It's going to be interesting to see. And again, I mean, with as anything, especially in basketball, it's subject to change. So
yeah,
we're going to see something with there.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could really see your 3, 4, and 5 positions kind of be swapped around. For instance, if you wanted to go with a smaller lineup, you got Powers and Saunders you could run. And then if you wanted to go with a bigger lineup, you could go with Coffey and Blake. So I think, this team has some height. I think this is one of the tallest teams that Virginia has put together in a long time. And, it's not Ralph Sampson height that we got out there, but I think we do have some guys that, last year we struggled because we really didn't have a true 5 outside of Blake, who was a freshman who kind of got big-bodied around. But this year, I mean, you're looking at 6'11", 6'10", 6'10", 6'8". You got multiple big 6'9", 6'9". I mean, we got some height on this team. So really, we could put a starting lineup on the court that's no smaller than 6'9".
Yeah. And before we kind of really get into these players, I do want to highlight one of the big off-season storylines for UVA basketball, and that was going to be the big changes to the offensive strategy that we put out there. So if you don't know, UVA traditionally uses a mover blocker offense. It's a little more slow paced, and there's some things about it that I think complement the pack line defense scheme. So, but this year, I think because they were kind of pressured into it, or maybe they saw that there needed to be changed. There's an argument going out there that offense has evolved and that the pack line is no longer, the mover blocker is no longer, realistic in today's college basketball game. So it sounds like they've made some moves. It sounds like they want to spread the floor out a little bit more. They want to get more to the rim. But Sean, do you have any particular perspective on what we're going to be doing this year?
I think we're going to see us try to take the open shot when we get it quicker in the shot clock, and we're going to run the fast break more than we traditionally did. So I think that's 2 of the things that Tony didn't really like to do. So he wanted to find the shot, which he challenged IMAC last year to shoot the ball earlier in the shot clock and everything. So I think there is some things, but we definitely are changing it for the good. it hurts me because I'm a fan of the blocker mover system. I think it really did keep us in games that we didn't have when we were out talented. When the other teams had better players, that system really thrived and allowed us to play in those games. However, on the flip side, it did have its cons. So again, like if you look at this year, we got 6 new guys coming to the team. There's no way you're getting these 6 new guys to grasp the blocker mover system and the pack line D as quick as you need them to, because the pack line itself is very intricate in the movement and where you need to be, where you need to position your body. It's not like you're just saying go guard a man and then are you going to play off the ball or are you going to play tight man. So I think this is kind of that. This is a casing point on why we had to transition off of our traditional system, is because, again, you're looking at 6 new players coming in and only 2 starters returning. So I think that's why you're going to see a lot of change. And as far as schematics or how it's going to pan out, we haven't seen much yet because we didn't go to the blue and white scrimmage, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was a reason.
There was reasonings. I tried, but unable to make it there this time. So it's going to be interesting for us. We saw some of the highlights, and they look good, kicking the ball out, running fast break. So that's mainly what we can see. The true test is what we see Wednesday night when we take on the Fighting Camels of Campbell University out of the Big South.
Well, last year they took care of those types of games. They took care of business, and I hope to see that trend continue because, one of the big gripes was that we let lower-level teams always hang around, but last year that wasn't the case. So I'm looking forward to this Campbell game. It's a very important – it's bad to call it a statement game, but in some way it's a tone-setting type of game that we have to really execute on, and I guess this is their coming out party. I mean, you know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting to see. As far as, like, the style change and whatnot – it's going to be interesting to see how the substitutions work. If they're going to be going a little bit fast-paced, I mean, we're going to have to get fresh legs in. So we're going to have to be a little deeper in this game, which may, in the long run, be better for us with player retention.
I agree. We're going to break down this roster here in a minute, but I really do think that's where this team can thrive, is the fact that we do have a deep roster. We have a ton of guys that can get playing time, and a lot of guys contribute. And, the interim coach, Ron Sanchez, has been talking that he's not sure who is going to be. He doesn't believe there's going to be anybody who's going to redshirt. I mean, yes, we lost Worley already. But, I mean, if you look at this roster we assembled over the summer, you're trying to figure out how many minutes are you going to be able to allocate these guys. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing to manage throughout this year for the staff is how are you going to satisfy everybody's playing time situation and getting the most out of your guys when you're trying to rotate them in and out. And we almost have 2 starting fives. I would almost say you have 2 rotations on this team. I feel like we are deep.
Well, it seems like we have the tools to put out a starting 5 that can maybe flex a little bit according to the matchups, because really that's what the game of basketball is about matchups. So we definitely appear to have some depth. It's a young team. It's a very young team.
Yeah, but only 2 seniors, and one of them is a former walk-on, and then you have Tane Murray. Those are the only 2 seniors you have.
He's been there like 8 years, I think, but
he's been there a while. I mean, he's a good role player.
I mean, his visa has to expire at some point.
From Auckland, New Zealand, Tane Murray. I mean, he provided the spark we needed some last year. So, yeah. But again, so when you go back to it, we only have 2 seniors. Neither one of them are starting. So this is a situation where it's going to be interesting to see how we manage this year to manage for retention purposes down the stretch. But,
all right, so I want to get into these players. We've been looking at it for a minute. We've been putting it off. So one of the starting 5 guys that you had was Blake Buchanan. He actually started a few games last year. If you don't know, he's a forward. They're going to play him at the center position. He's 6'11", 227. Last year, I think they had him down at 6'10", 215. He did play all 34 games. Well, not all 34. He played 34 games last year. He only averaged 3 points, almost 4, and 3 rebounds. We weren't the greatest rebounding team. I think that's something that we struggled with last year. Ryan Dunn was our leading rebounder. He shot 41% from the field and 50% from the free throw line, and that's something that I think Sean and I will discuss a little bit later. Was
free throw
free throws.
shooting.
So hopefully Ron might get the job if we shoot over 70% from the free throw line. But we'll talk more about that later. But the big thing about Blake Buchanan was last year was that game against Florida, which he had a career high in that game.
Yeah, it was his breakout game. Unfortunately, it didn't continue. I think the tape got out on him, but he was just a little undersized. And I think you mentioned his weight went up about 25 pounds, I think you said.
No, about 10 pounds.
10 pounds? Yeah,
But,
25 is a lot.
You know, he was a freshman getting starts and getting quality playing time. So he got pushed around a lot last year. That Florida game was a good breakout game, and I think he gave us like a glimpse of what he can be. He was a good high school player. And I think I want to see if he got stronger this year. Like I said, he got big boyed a little bit, and that actually cost him a little bit of time. He lost some minutes to Jordan Minor, if you remember. Jordan Minor went on that stretch towards the second half of the season where he was a starter purely based on his strength and how aggressive he was under the basket.
As long as Blake followed the strength and conditioning program that Mike Curtis put together for him, he should have put on a lot of muscle. Like you said, he put on about 10 or so pounds, and he's not the only guy that who put on some weight following this program. So you got to think these guys are getting fed well, and they're going to make sure he's getting his nutritional goals and everything is met.
Yeah, so I just want to see him. 19, 20-year-old, still got a lot of time to develop physically and, just kind of develop a little bit more mentally in the game of basketball. It seems like he'll probably battle for time in that position I think Saunders might get some of his minutes, if they change the lineup a little bit around, and Anthony Robinson, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So, it's going to be real interesting. I think he's going to have to earn his spot as a starter.
That 5 spot's going to be fluid, and I think that's going to come down to, like you said, matchups, and it's going to be rotation, who's playing well with others. But at the start of the season, I think that's Blake's job, and we're going to see how he performs.
Is there anything that you want to see Blake do this year that will make you feel pretty good about him being a starter?
I think you just got to play consistently, and he looked to put the ball on the ground too much last year and not stay strong with the ball. He's just got to finish. He had some times where he looks like Angel Reese out there trying to finish a layup, and he struggles. So he's just got to finish some. But I think the ceiling is the roof for him. So
yeah. So what I want to see him improve on this year, I think free throws. If he can boost his percentage up and become that guy, he can. Because he was getting to the line last year, like I said, because he wasn't getting finishes, but he was getting the calls. So he was getting to the line. So if he can boost his percentage up at the free throw line, he can definitely become a threat. He has pretty good hands in catching the ball. And also want to see him bang more down there and be a rebounder, because we need that if we're going to be changing the way that our offense runs. So another starter that you have is Elijah Saunders. What do you got for Saunders? Elijah Saunders.
No, it's like, were you trying to look at this again?
Yeah,
We'll shorten it up a little bit, which is, he's a returner. So, all right. So Elijah Saunders is coming to us as a 6'8", 240 forward. He's a third-year transfer and coming to us from San Diego State, where he appeared in all 37 games and started 21 games last year with an average about 6.2 points per game and 3.6 rebounds, and gave you about 20 minutes a game. So biggest thing is he was 96% from the free throw line. He also can shoot the 3-ball a little bit at 32%.
I'm not sure he got to the line a ton, though, at San Diego State.
24 for 45.
And I also want to mention his weight. So when I was looking into this, I had him at 6'8", 225, but I did see on another site that he's 6'8", 240. So hopefully he kind of lands in the middle, but I'll take 6'8", 240. That's a big boy right there.
He had a career high of 16 points versus Washington last year, and then he had 9 games where he hit multiple three-pointers, included 4, a career best at UNLV. So he's a guy that's he can go out, he can shoot the 3, he can get you the rebound. He had 4 more rebounds in 18 games. I mean, he's a third year, so he's got plenty of time. And, he's coming to us from Phoenix, Arizona. He's a former 4-star recruit, 1,000-point scorer, and a McDonald's All-American nominee. So, I think this was a huge land for us, and I think this is someone we got. Obviously, we got him in the starting 5. this is someone who we're going to expect a lot of minutes from.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about Saunders. Initially, I didn't know really much about him, but you really got to think San Diego State is a great program. I mean, they've been going deep in the NCAA tournament for years now, and I believe 2023, they were in the national title game. So he was getting quality time playing there, but I think he just wanted an opportunity to showcase his talent. He has so far proven as one of the more consistent players in the scrimmages they've had and in practice. And another thing is just his versatility. I mean, he can probably play 3 and 4 position, maybe even 5 in a small lineup. But, one thing that I'm going to highlight before I move on is he seems to be really bought in with Ron Sanchez. Him and Ron Sanchez seem to have a really good relationship, and I think that's important for the success of this basketball team is having that good relationship with the coach. Definitely with the way that they transitioned. Isaac McNeely, third year.
Another. So Isaac is one of our main returners that's coming back. So 6'4", 195-pound, third year out of Polka, West Virginia. He started 33 games for us last year with an average 12 and just shy of 12.5 points. Shot 40% from the field and 44% from the three-point range. 84.7% from the free throw line. Boy, do we need those. He reached double-digit figures in 18 games, including 5 20-point tries. So, and he ranked 8th in the ACC in three-pointers made per game. He's a sharpshooter. He is one of those Kyle Guy type shooters. He comes off the screen and can make a bucket. He's also one of those guys I really need to see more out of. So last year, my biggest gripe with him is I felt like he would pass the ball too often when he had a wide open shot. Maybe it was that he was scared that he was going to shoot too early in the shot clock, but he needs to find a way to create his own shot. That's the only thing where I feel like his game is a little not as strong, is he can't create his own for the most part. He's got to come off that screen or he's got to get the ball kicked out to him. So I also felt like we struggled with dribble drive penetration last year, and he was someone who he struggled because he didn't get that. So he's someone who I'm expecting a big year out of, and I don't think he moves out of the starting lineup except for injury or just complete meltdown from year 2 to year 3.
Yeah, so my perspective on him is we know exactly what we're going to get so far. I think everybody thought that Isaac was going to come in and be that replacement for Kyle Guy, and we just haven't quite seen that. I've always been an IMAC fan. I think there's nothing better than a pure shooter. And it'll be interesting to see, Sean, you talked about having to get that shot off of the dribble. That's something that he kind of struggled with. But in this new offense, if they're spreading the floor and they're trying to get quicker looks at the basket, this may really play out in his favor, with, not having to shoot off the dribble. In addition to that, and we'll talk about him in a moment, is TJ Powers, who's also a great three-point shooter. So it'll be interesting with having another three-point shooter out on the floor where maybe you get that, Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome kind of vibe out there. So, it's going to be real interesting. I think he's positioned to have a really great year, and we're going to need every little bit. His weakness has always kind of been on the defensive side. But, again, you always got to have a great shooter out there, and you can kind of, give him a little bit of a pass on his defense.
Yeah, I agree. And IMAC definitely has some. He struggled with defense a little bit. However, I agree with what you're saying with Powers and the others that we've already talked about with Saunders. When you have guys at all around him that can score, it's going to take the pressure off, because then who are you going to double? Who are you going to really focus on? And I think this could be a situation where you focus on one guy and the other guy beats you this year. So, but I think to wrap up Isaac, I think look for a breakout year from IMAC. A lot of experience. Again, he's an excellent shooter, and we just need him to take off this year. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what IMAC has, what he's going to contribute to this team this year.
All right, so I just brought him up a moment ago. TJ Power. This was the big get of Tony Bennett in the transfer portal. TJ Power is transferring from Duke. He is going to be a sophomore this year, so we got 3 years out of him. He is a high school 5-star. He's 6'9", 221. we're not. We may see him in the 4 spot, but we should expect him to be in the 3 position, kind of that replacement for Ryan Dunn, but with a lot more offensive explosiveness. Which you may argue that you're seeing Ryan Dunn in his pro career taking off in that position. But anyway, yeah, 5-star in high school. I guess they kind of downgrade him as a 4-star. Interesting thing that you may not have known about him, Sean. He was a 5th-year high school senior, so he's 1 year older. Obviously he's 1 year older, and I could tell you from experience that being 1 year older in high school makes a big difference. But he's an older guy, so he's going to have a little bit more of a athletic build to him. And also, Sean, he was a 2-sport guy. He pitched and he threw lefty, and he plays basketball righty. So you're looking at an ambidextrous guy. We did get a sample size out of him at Duke. He played 26 games at Duke. He averaged about 7 minutes. One thing that you should be excited about is he shot 15 from 42 from the arc. So watch him. He is a pure shooter, and with that length, he's going to have that ability to kind of shoot over guys. So we're going to look to him to be a scorer for us, and we're also going to be looking to him to boost our free throw percentage. I think with him, he has a bright future at UVA, and one of the reasons I think he left Duke was just because of opportunity, and anywhere else he would have been a starter.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of one of those problems. I think it's unfortunate, and it may not happen as much now, but it's the situation where you're a big-name high school recruit, and where do you want to go? You want to go to Duke, but Duke's got 3, 4, 5 of you already there, and you're really scrapping for playing time, and I think that's what you see. I mean, he had 7 minutes a game or so? That's not enough time for him. So what's very interesting is that we initially recruited him out of high school, and we offered him, as well as North Carolina, Iowa, Notre Dame, he had offers from. So this is a guy that we lost to Duke out of high school, and then now when we had a second chance, he made the right decision. I am looking forward to the day where he goes in against Duke, and he might burn them down. He might light them up. This is a revenge game for TJ, but like you said, he was the big snatch out of the portal for us. So
You think we put him on Cooper Flag?
I don't know who you put on Cooper Flag. We might have to put 3 guys on that one, so it'll be interesting.
Die. It's fun saying, right? It's fun to say his name.
Oh, yeah. I think the announcers are going to have a ball talking about Die Ames. He's a 6'1", point guard, 190 pounds, second year out of Chicago, Illinois. So he played 31 out of the 34 games last year. He's a transfer from Kansas State. He only missed 2 games due to injury. He had a lower average, 5 points a game, 2 assists, and 1 rebound in 20 minutes. He also is another guy who's shooting the three ball pretty well, over 30%. So, and he's also about 70% from the line. So again, another improvement we need. If you can't tell, we're emphasizing free throw percentages, because that was one of the worst things that Virginia had going for them last year, was missing free throws. We shot well under 50% free throw line majority of the time. So back to Die.
Well, so after the Dante experience, there's maybe some apprehensions with Die. So I was watching his tape today, and he has a very explosive quick step, something that UVA I think has lacked for a little while. I mean, Beekman had a crafty game, but he wasn't. He was successful in his pacing, just like a changeup pitcher. You know what I mean? But Die is really quick. He has a great first step. If we open up the floor, I think you start adding these little factors in. So if he's open up the floor and can slash the bucket, you're going to see kickouts. There's going to be good kickout options between TJ Power, McNeely. And we did glaze over it, but from what I can tell from the preseason games, Elijah Saunders is also a 3-point threat. So
we don't lack 3-point shooters on this team, that's for sure.
Yeah, so it kind of goes to show that why maybe Rhodey isn't in the starting 5 this year. But
yeah, Rhodey is going to be relegated back to that role player.
But back to Die, what are some other things that interest you about him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a former 4-star. He's got 3 years eligibility left, so I mean that's going to be huge to see. And he played a lot as a freshman, which is valuable. So the overall theme of this team is youth, We only have 2 seniors on this team.
So even just looking at your starting five, just going real quick, Blake sophomore, Elijah Saunders Jr. That's 2 more years of playing. TJ Power, sophomore, 3 more years. Dai you said is a, you said
He's a second year,
yeah,
so he's going to have 3 years left.
A lot of youth with this starting five. They're also almost all transfers except for one, but or 2, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. So I think Dai is going to be, he was one of those late gets we snagged in the portal when Dante Harris decided to transfer and put his name in there. I think that's when we really kind of pushed hard to get Dai, and we were able to snag him. So,
well, while we're talking about transfers, there's another transfer, Carter Lang, and he's a hometown boy, right? So
yeah. Carter Lang is another big body kid, so he's a 6'9", 238 forward coming out of Charlottesville. So on this UVA team, we're getting guys coming back home. He is a local kid from Charlottesville again. He went to St. Anne Belfield, and he's, like I said, second guy. He's a transfer from Vanderbilt, played in 24 games, had 7 starts, and scored 8 points against Boston College. That was his high last year. And then he had a couple other games where he scored 7, had 11 rebounds. So he's just a big-bodied guy who's coming to this program. And he's coming into this program as a preferred walk-on. He's not a scholarship roster position for us. I think he just wanted to be closer to home. And I think he is someone who's going to be a great addition. And he's a former McDonald's All-American nominee. He was one of the top student athletes in Virginia, 4-star recruit, and number 5 player in the country. So if you can get a guy like him to come in as a walk-on, he's going to be big for us. And again, that's going to just provide that depth. He could play that 3, he could play that 4 spot.
Yeah, so I wasn't very, it's great that we got a guy in the transfer portal coming from another Power 5 conference school. I don't really know what to expect out of him as a preferred walk-on. Maybe it was just a spot thing. I wouldn't be surprised if he just gets Warley's scholarship, that's become vacant.
Well, in this day and age, you can get a NIL deal that can cover your tuition, and it's the same thing as a scholarship.
Yeah, but again, I don't know what to expect out of him. I just wanted to bring him up while we're talking about our transfers. So you know who he is now. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about our red shirts. We've got Anthony Robinson, and we have Christian Bliss. I think both of those guys, they're going to be impact players this year. They may even become at some point starters, or they may be the starters. I'm not really quite sure. A little bit about Anthony Robinson. I'm really excited about Anthony Robinson. He's a big boy, and we need big guys. That was something last year that we really struggled with, and I recall looking back on our roster when we were just getting really banged around in the paint, and I'm like, why isn't this guy playing? So if you don't know, he is a 3-star. He's from Georgia, but he played private school down in North Carolina. 6'10", 250. That's a big boy, Sean.
Yeah, and we mentioned he's a redshirt, so he did have that year of strength and conditioning through my guy Mike Curtis. He's the one who put on 25 pounds since arriving at Virginia last year. So I think that's a huge thing, and 6'10", 250, that's a big boy. So he's athletic.
Yeah, so that's his bit. That's what he's advertised as, extremely athletic. He spent time in the green machine as well. So it's what's great about the red shirt when it's used appropriately, not just as a means of retaining another year of eligibility, but really, so that you go to another school. But when it's used as a tool to develop, that's what he did. And I think there's a little bit of backstory with the red shirt stuff with him, and I think he came from it from an honest position of redshirting and recognizing that he needed to continue to develop. But again, extremely athletic, and I think that's going to be really key in the 5 role. And I want to read to you what Isaiah Wilkins had to say about him. He said, when he dunks, he's trying to rip the rim off, which is beautiful. That should get you really excited because, how pumped up did you get with Ryan Dunn last year in his dunks? But I've just always wanted that nasty guy down in the post that just wants to rip the goal off.
We got to find a way to fit him in and get him on the court. You talk about 6'10", 250, athletic, wanting to rip the rim off. does he have that similar game as Ryan Dunn? I mean, he's been around the program. He's learned what we want to do. And that's the beauty with him being a redshirt and buying into this program. He could have probably transferred anywhere and got a second opportunity, but he decided to stick it out with the program, and he's going to be a huge addition. It's going to be a highly anticipated debut, and I'm very looking forward to see what he can provide to us.
All right, so one of our other red shirts that I think is going to be looking to get some playing time, Christian Bliss.
Yeah, another big guy, 6'4", 198 redshirt freshman. So he also redshirted.
Well, big to you, I, and somebody else especially. But, I mean...
But he's one of the 6'4" as a point guard. That's an NBA point guard right there.
Sure. I'm just saying, if you look at our we talked about the height of this team, but if you looked at our height of this team, he's actually on the bottom scale of the height rise on the roster.
Yeah.
But I mean, yes.
He's a guy who can go out and score.
If you're looking at London, Parentis, Kihei Clark, those guys, yeah, he's a big guy.
And we on this podcast are huge fans of Kihei Clark.
Yes, sure, definitely. We are. We're Clark boys.
At times.
All of us.
All three of us love Kihei Clark. And no one's here to defend themselves.
But no, Christian Bliss, again, went through the green machine, is acclimated. I'm telling you guys, if the red shirt tool is utilized correctly, it really does pay off. And I think that, again, he has kind of like a smooth, slick game, which, again, we need to see that him getting into the paint and get with the kickouts.
Yeah, again, he's a defensive guy as well. He fits the program mold, and he has the ability to create space in another athletic guy. There's talks about who's going to be the one guy, the point guard, and that they talked about that with Dai and Christian, and previously with Worley. So, I mean, him and Dai might be the ones that are going to be leading this program. So, another guy we're excited about, and I'm glad he stuck it out and he stayed with the program. So, very exciting.
All right, well, let's talk about some of our freshmen that we have. Jacob Coffey. He was one of the big gets for Bennett this year. Four-star, top 100 guy, 6'10", 232 forward. So that's pretty big coming in as a freshman. It's going to be real interesting to see where he fits in this year. I mean, he has some upperclassmen that are ahead of him, and I haven't heard very much about him in the offseason, how he's doing. I can really kind of just looking at his scouting report, he comes across as a very capable guy. Some of the lines that you see is he's not the most athletic, so that's kind of like a red flag to me in terms of where he's going to fit in, getting up and down the court, and that he was going to be paired really well with the classic Tony Bennett offense. That being said, doesn't mean he can't adjust, and he is a freshman, so he is going to be looking to kind of change his game, which would probably be better for him in the long run. I won't be surprised if he redshirts, though. And again, because of the guys that are ahead of him with Anthony Robinson, Blake Buchanan, and other guys that he'll have to, Elijah Saunders, that he's going to have to fight for time with. So don't be surprised if he's redshirting.
We could use him and put him out there with Blake and get that big lineup going. So just want to highlight one thing. He was averaging 20-some points a game in high school. We'll see how that translates to the college game. And, UVA has this tendency where we can take 20-point scores and turn them into 6-point scores because of the pace that we play. So I'm hoping that with the change of everything, we get the same production, if not better production, for some of these guys at the next level.
But you never know. I mean, and we'll talk a little bit about more. The verdict's still out of who our coach is going to be and what all is going to go into that. He sounds more like a traditional big man, and there is some big benefits of having that guy that runs through. Look at Purdue last year. Teams that have just big guys, it kind of spreads the floor out a little bit. And if you surround a guy like that with a lot of 3-point shooters, and a guy that can slash to the bucket, that leads to a lot of success and takes a lot off your guards as well and having to score. So if you have that low post presence scoring, which we did not have, we had no low post presence scoring. So yeah, you may have athleticism in Anthony Robinson, you may have experience with Blake Buchanan, but we're going to be looking for him if Coffey is going to be the guy that gets PT. We're going to be looking for him as a scorer in the paint mostly. So,
and he averaged a double-double his junior year. So he can show that he can get the rebound. I don't think he's going to redshirt. When you hear Ron Sanchez talk, he said he doesn't have any plans of anybody redshirting. Obviously, that could change. We're still 3 days away from the first game.
So we have speaking of scoring, so we have another real, just as the UVA basketball season is real mysterious, we have another mysterious player coming to his team. A guy that, I mean, if you know, I suppose, Ishan Sharman, the Canadian. There's been some good Canadian basketball players, actually more than you probably recall. But 6'5", 192 shooting guard out of Canada. He is the number 37 shooting guard in the class of 2024. Again, like I said, he's a bit of a mystery guy. He was the Canadian High School Player of the Year. And he likens himself, and I think what they kind of sold to him, he kind of likens his game to Kyle Guy and Jerome. And, with that, I think that he could really benefit for having Kyle Guy. If that's what he wants to be, he can really benefit from having Kyle Guy on the staff.
Is there anybody else you would rather be compared to than a Kyle Guy? I mean, that's a huge, especially coming to Virginia and saying, hey, you're similar to Kyle Guy, and you look at the folklore that is Kyle Guy. How many times can I say Kyle Guy in a sentence? But, it's
maybe,
a great...
Maybe Steph Curry, the guy that got passed over. But
it's the same thing. It's he's very similar, like you said, to Kyle Guy, Jerome, and IMAC. It's another comparison. So he's a shooter.
And the reason why I say Steph Curry is because his release is that quick catch and release.
And especially at 6'5", he still has the ability to shoot over some folks too, especially at that point guard or that guard position. So he was a starter on Canada's U16 and U17 nationals team. So he's got
the pedigree.
He's played good competition, and he led the team in scoring in 2022.
I think he's going to battle for minutes with McNeely. I don't really know yet how they're going to play.
I don't think he battles McNeely for minutes, but he could be the rotational guy to sub McNeely out.
I guess that's what I mean.
Where it's going to be feed the hot hand. Ultimately,
what I'm trying to say is that we're not really sure how they're going to play the 1 and 2 position quite yet. I mean, are they going to try to work Christian Bliss into that 2 spot? I don't know. And have Dye and Christian Bliss when McNeely's out on the floor at the same time. It's going to be a lot of stuff going on. But I will say, we saw it last year. McNeely with the injury, if you recall, he was out for quite a few games. If I remember right, at the middle beginning of the season. So that's where you saw Gertrude come in and get that time. So I could see a situation where if they're playing the 2 exclusively, where they're not working Christian Bliss into the position, where Christian Bliss is exclusively focused on being a point guard. Same thing with there, where I could see him getting time. But
I think he also has the ability to handle the rock a little bit. Yeah. So he has that opportunity to handle the point guard position as well. But we don't want him to be the primary point guard.
I want him to be.
But this is another guy that can spot up and shoot the 3. And if you've tracked, that's our 4th guy we've talked about who's got a 3-point shot. So
the scouting report has him as a shoot off the dribble kind of guy, which he'll have to develop that catch and shoot. Yeah, you got to be on both sides of the coin.
For him, he's going to have to adjust to the speed of the game, and once he does that, look for him to grow and have an impact on this team.
Rumor is he showed up with hockey pads on for the first practice.
Hey, and a Labatt blue.
Hey. All right, so let's talk. We skipped over another redshirt freshman. That was Desmond Roberts.
He's the other one who came from Charlottesville, St. Anne Belfield player. So averaged 10 points for them, 6 rebounds in 2022, 2023. I think he's going to be someone we're going to have some opportunity for. With that 6'4", 207 frame, it's going to be really hard for him to find some minutes. I think they've talked about him being able to find a spot on this team. It's going to be hard. So we'll see what he brings to the table. Again, it's a good addition. Again, depth is not our issue on this team. So I don't have a whole lot to really bring about. We haven't seen him play much. Can't really go back but so much on his high school. But, another guy on this team that we can depend upon, and we'll see how he progresses and goes about this his game.
So there's a few more players left. There's one, and I didn't want to talk about him because I really could care less if he sees the floor. I'd rather him have transferred out. I think that he steals minutes when he's not justified to get minutes, and then he shows just a slight glimpse for just a moment and never really helps us out. Andrew Road, D. Hit the road, Jack. I'm just not a roadie fan.
He was a disappointment for the most part last year. I think he was kept in the game because of defense. Again, he played in 33, including 27 starts, but he only averaged 4 points. So he was another liability on the offensive end, and I think that's why we saw IMAC struggle, is because they know Rhodey wasn't the guy who was going to knock it down. He had a few games where he came on stronger, like he had a 13-point game against Texas A&M. But for the most part, he shot 25% from the 3-point range and 30% from the field.
All right,
and in general,
I think that's enough about him. I just hope he redshirts and leaves.
yeah, I mean, he's a defensive player, but I don't know where he's going to fit on this team. He may have missed his opportunity to find a new ride. So sorry, Andrew. You put on the orange and blue and you help us out, but I just don't see where you fit on this team right now.
All right, you got 2 seniors. One of them in Bryce Walker, another Tane Murray. This is Tane Murray's, extra lap, so to speak. He's here. I mean, he's gonna get his. I guess he's just gonna get. That.
I like Tane.
Yeah,
he gave us a spark late in the year, and where he started 2 of the games, and especially in the ACC tournament, he gave us some spark. So he came on strong as a role player. He's good defensively. He's been around a while. He knows the program.
He always extends his stay with his playing time. Like he wears out
I feel
his
like
welcome.
we shout at the TV, why is Murray in the game? And then he comes around and knocks down a shot or 2, and then you're like, okay. I mean, small sample size, but again, 48% from the field, 45 from 3-point range. So I think his biggest game, and we talked about late, 12 points against Louisville, and then he played strong against Georgia Tech, and then you look at the ACC tournament, he really came on even stronger and gave us some big numbers. And, I mean, you look, he was the highlight. He probably won us a few of those games. Him and Jordan Minor carried us through some contests last year.
This year, I don't want to be in those situations where we have to rely on those guys to get us over. You know what I mean?
And I agree.
And I think that
it's going to be tough.
Jordan Minor was different. I mean, obviously he did okay, but anyway, he's not there this year anyway. So, but my thing is that Murray,
he's going to be a good role player.
He's a good role player, but I think the coaching staff this year really needs to look at him and not allow him to vulture minutes away when it's not needed. And the same thing with Rhodey. But Bryce Walker, another senior.
Yeah, Bryce Walker, he's a great story. He earned a jersey after 2 years as a practice player. He's appeared in 7 games so far and made his debut against North Carolina A&T. He's one of those stories, and Virginia has one of these every year, where you look at last year, Chase Coleman had a opportunity, 2 years ago, Chase Coleman knocked down a 3 as a walk-on in a game. So I think he's going to have his moment as this year unfolds, but for the most part, thank you for your service to Virginia Athletics. We'll see you on the other side.
But where you cannot discount all the people that I've just been really given a really hard time about is you can't discount their value on the program, on the practice end of things, and
so
helping us get
in the
ready.
Green Machine, which they got an excellent teammate. Kyle Guy's been running the Green Machine as well. So we got one more. We're just going to touch on, and that is Elijah Gertrude, but he's out for the year, unfortunately. So he's redshirting for this year due to injury.
It's a funny story, I suppose. But
well, I mean, if you know the culture at UVA, all the student athletes wear a blue Virginia book bag and ride scooters around. So you put 2 and 2 together, and he's out for the year.
What I want to also say about him was he did show some real big glimpses last year. So I'm hoping that with Tony Bennett's departure, that it doesn't impact him staying or leaving. I think he has a bright future.
I think with the Tony Bennett departure and the change in the offense, he's going to fit well. He had glimpses. He just struggled sometimes at finishing. He would provide a flash in the pan. He has some speed. So he's going to be someone to really look for next year, and let him get healed up and ready to rock and roll next year.
Absolutely. That rounds out the roster. And big topic. We've talked about it a lot as a group. Our coaching staff. So, again, like, if you don't know, you should know if you watch any of this or just follow sports in general. Tony Bennett decided to retire, really due to, one, his feelings about the nature of college basketball, and also his desire and commitment level. I don't think we really need to talk too much about it. I mean, that's just kind of the glazed over version.
Yeah,
What he did leave was a lasting legacy.
I agree. He's left us in a good position currently. I think he helped assemble this team. And we talked about it. When you look at the paper, we're trying to figure out where we're going to get minutes for these players. That was a culture that Tony Bennett fostered. And if you really look at it, that I think we're 18 days or so into this transfer portal window and only one person's left. It shows that the culture is not being abandoned because the departure of one guy. And when you look at this coaching staff, you got guys who Ron Sanchez has been there 11 seasons, Jason Wilford 16 seasons, Orlando Vandross 10 seasons, Isaiah Wilkins, former player, 4th season. And then you got Brad Soderberg, 10 seasons. And then you got Kyle Guy coming back and Chase Coleman helping out. So you got some guys who have been around this program for a long time. So I think that's what kind of sets us apart and puts us in a good position is the fact that we got guys who've been there forever and nothing's really changing. The foundation has been laid by Tony Bennett. It's up to Ron Sanchez to pick it up and continue.
All right. So our group of guys in here is pretty divided on Ron Sanchez. We both have different takes on it. But so Sean, I just kind of want to get your team Sanchez. So I want to get your perspective on him and how you feel about Ron Sanchez and him as our interim coach. So I want to give you a fair shake and allow you to flesh it out.
So I think the Ron Sanchez situation is ultimately it benefits us short term and kind of prevents us from taking a huge step back. So if Tony Bennett retired at the end of last year after the Colorado State game and says, hey, you know what, I'm done, we probably don't have 3 or 4 or 5 guys on this roster. So they hit the transfer portal early and they go find new teams, and then you got to do a nationwide search and who you're going to pluck to run this team, and then you're behind the 8 ball in recruiting. So ultimately, I think with the way Tony Bennett he's walking away this late prior to the start of a season, I think that sets us up in a good position where, Ron Sanchez has head coaching experience. It was at UNC Charlotte. So it's not the best coaching tenure there. He was under 500 as a program, but he was building it. And he left that program to come back to Virginia and take the associate head coaching job. So,
well, that seems like it might have been pre-designed.
Yeah, I agree. I think the writing was on the wall, and talked to other friends and Virginia fans that seeing Ron Sanchez leave a head coaching job to come back to Virginia did kind of show you, hey, something might happen with Tony. And ultimately, they were right, where Tony Bennett decided to step away, which.
So you feel also, going back to some of our previous conversations, you feel that I'm just going to put a baseline on it. If he goes, if he's over 600, over 650 win average, you feel like he's earned that position?
Yes, and this is where it fits for Virginia long-term as well. So essentially this year is a trial period for Ron Sanchez. This is a show me what you can do and show me you deserve to have the interim tag removed. So if he does that, I don't want to put a number on it because anything can happen. We could end up with multiple injuries down the road, but if he gets these guys together and we're winning games and competing, I think you have the ability for Ron Sanchez to remove that interim tag and be the head coach.
If that's really the case, so is it because you would like him to be, if he's successful, you'd really like him to be our coach from the perspective that you want to see him continue on the Bennett program?
It's a continuance of the legacy. And long term, if you think, hey, if he's not the guy, the program probably steps back and we are kind of mediocre basketball team again, and it might take us a while to rebuild. Whereas if Ron Sanchez is the guy, it gives us the ability to just kind of pick up and keep moving. And if you listen, Ron Sanchez and Jason Wilford were doing a bulk of the recruiting. I know Tony did have his hand in a lot of it as well, but Ron Sanchez had built some of these relationships, and he's a relationship person. I read an article today where at UNC Charlotte, everybody knew Ron Sanchez. Everybody down from the custodian staff to his graduate assistants who are now coaching that they call him or he calls them and checks in and see how's everything's going. So he's a Tony Bennett-like person, and I'm all for giving him the chance because if he is successful, I think it's the best thing for Virginia moving forward is that he continues the foundation that was laid, and he's just got to show us what he can do, and he's got to bring in some recruits and see where we go from there and win games with his team. It's showing that when Tony was going to retire, that you had 30 days to put your name out in the transfer portal. In this day and age, you could transfer and redshirt a year if you wanted to wait, or you're not necessarily losing a year of eligibility if you transfer this late in the year, and only one person transferred. I think it's showing that the culture that we have at Virginia, and I think it's going to benefit Ron. And ultimately, I'll say, if he's not the guy, we're also not on the hook for any type of buyout. He was the interim coach, and we're going to move a different direction, and then we can start from scratch on where we want to go. So
I'll add, I don't really think that Warley left because Bennett left. I don't think Ron Sanchez is the reason he left. I think that it boils down to his playing time. So, that could have been any player at any point.
He got the opportunity to leave early, and he did.
He just got, like you said, the window that he wasn't expecting to opened up for him. The Chance Mallory thing, to me, is concerning. I mean, I don't really blame the kid, but if Ron Sanchez was the guy that recruited him, why wouldn't he have? He knows what he's getting though, but
you also, the unknown is if you stay committed to Virginia and you're not keeping your options open. Let's say Virginia goes through the year and then they go, well, Ron, you're not the guy, and then you cut him. Then Chance Mallory's on the outside looking in. He's like, oh, well, now where am I going to go? So him opening it up, it keeps his options open. He could go anywhere else he wants, hopefully not Tech. Now, this is where I think Ron Sanchez has the opportunity.
Yeah, but he could have watched the fact that he decommitted early.
It's better to decommit early and keep your options open. You got the whole year in front of you, because if they remove the interim tag from Ron early in the year, let's say March or February, late January, early February, that gives Chance a time or opportunity to say, all right, Ron, I'm still in. Bring me in. Let's go to work. But you don't know who's going to be the head coach. So I think it's a smart thing to do. If that was my kid, I would say, hey, let's decommit and let's just see how it unfolds.
I'm just saying it doesn't look as good for Ron, because if Ron was the guy that recruited him.
But again, you're not 100% sure if Ron's going to be the guy next year.
But I mean, still,
I'm sure they've been in contact, and I'm sure the recruiting is still heavily, and I would say we're still probably favorited to land Chance Mallory if Ron Sanchez remains the head coach, because again, he has got the interim tag, and if you go through the whole year committed to Virginia and then Ron Sanchez doesn't get the job, then you're trying to find where you can go and who's got a roster spot available.
So time will tell. But
yeah, I agree.
So I have to disagree with you with Ron Sanchez. I think removing the interim tag would be very, very risky. It's a gamble, because what you're saying is like, okay, you've done well with Tony's guys, and you can say, no, well, Ron Sanchez recruited them and this and that, but ultimately it was Tony Bennett that he had as really the guy that he was recruiting for. So they're Tony's guys. So even if he does really well, you have to have expectations that you have to just know that he's going to continue to recruit. I don't know, and you don't know. So I think it's a big gamble that if you decide to remove that interim tag, name him head coach, even if he had a pretty good season, you're still going off the success of Tony's guys. So I think you potentially, if he's successful even for 2 or 3 years, I mean, when you run out the time on these guys that Tony was able to get in, you're potentially setting yourself up for him not to be successful or the program to be successful. And reason why I think that's important is right now we're a highly desirable program to come to. But if the program starts to decline after year 2, after year 3, if they're not getting recruits as Ron Sanchez is your coach, and the program continues to recruit, it's going to be harder to go out and get that top tier coach that they need to get to keep this program going. And so I think that's why I'm just very apprehensive about Ron Sanchez. I think that there are better coaches out there that they could go out and get now or at the end of the year. And so that's why I'm just very hesitant to want Sanchez as our head coach. And I understand like preserving the legacy of Tony Bennett. Tony Bennett's legacy is sealed with the wins that he gave us and everything like that. I don't think anybody's ever going to look back and look at Tony and be like, well, he left. That's it. You know what I mean? But it's time to start a new chapter for UVA basketball, in my opinion. And I think that if you want a fresh start, you just got to go out there and get a different coach. But you have to go out and get a good coach. So that's the downside. Who was available and everything like that. But you have a better chance of getting somebody that is a high caliber coach if the program is still a high caliber get.
I agree. And the only reason I defend Ron Sanchez, and I think he has a great opportunity. I do agree we have to see how he recruits. So let's say as soon as they remove the interim tag, then boom, Chance Mallory comes right back in. He's like, all right, I'm in. And then theoretically, we only have 2 spots that are opening up next year. So whoever else he can try to bring in. And then we'll see what happens in the portal. I think it is a question mark with his recruiting. He did have the ability to bring in some guys. He did start winning games at Charlotte. He had a couple 16-win seasons, and then including a 20-plus win season the year he left. So he was building that around. And it's not as much as preserving Bennett's legacy. It's more so continuing what Tony built, and we know it works. So,
but I think you can still continue. You have to look at it as Tony's winning way, not Tony Bennett's system. Ron Sanchez is going to bring Tony Bennett's system. Does he have that Tony Bennett magic in him? And from what we can tell, we have a small sample size at Charlotte. But again, like I said, we don't really know. And that's going to be a thing. Tony was special in the sense of not even just how he coached his strategy, but just how he cultivated his players and taught his players. That's still to be determined for Sanchez. Now, we have discussed this before, that the culture of just college athletics and college basketball is changing. So do you need a coach that is going to be more adaptive to the changing of college basketball as you see, that can work this NIL crap, that can work this transfer portal? I don't like it just as any other guy, but you do have, if we're going to continue to be successful, we are going to have a guy that can perform in those formats. Can Ron Sanchez do it? Again, time will tell. But again, I think removing the interim tag would be very premature.
Well, I'm not saying remove it right away.
No,
I'm saying if you
he needs to have it the entire year. They need to do an interview at the end of the year because they need to see what they can get. He needs to go in there and interview for his job. Now he's going to have the best. He's gonna have a leg up.
We can say it's his job to lose,
but
theoretically,
I believe that he still has a prime opportunity despite being the interim coach, because he's going to be able to go into an interview and be like, well, look, I did this. That gives Carla the opportunity to potentially bring in that elite level coach. Now, if they're bringing some guy from George Mason in or some crap like that, then sure. But again, like, at least let's open up. Let's see what's
love
out
it
there.
or hate it.
Let's swipe right.
Love it or hate it, we are well known in the college basketball community. I mean, that's why when Tony Bennett retired, it was shocking, and it sent shockwaves through the whole community. So I think the other thing we're missing is the intricacies that comes with recruiting to Virginia. And he's been there for 11 years, and he kind of knows how to manage those things. I think you look at Tony Elliott. He may be struggling trying to wind his way through the intricacies of recruiting at Virginia. So I think Ron Sanchez knows how to handle that.
Well, the biggest thing about the recruiting, though, Sean, was I think a lot of the kickback had to do with the guys that Bennett wanted, and he wanted the 4-year guys, and I don't know if they can do that anymore, and so. It's not to say
that's the hard part.
But they can get 4-star guys at UVA, and I don't really think that the academics are really a barrier in the game of basketball. I think to some extent, sure, but it's not football. We're not filling out, that
60 minutes. I hear it. I'm just trying to there's pros and cons about keeping him around. Whereas, let's hypothetically, Ron's not your guy. You go out and you do a nationwide search, and you're looking who's going to be the next person. They come in, they don't understand the intricacies of Virginia, or they thought they knew, and then let's say you got 6 guys transfer out, you're left with 4 other players, and then it's up to him to try to rebuild through the portal in a short time period. Because anytime you're hiring at the end of the year, you're behind the 8 ball.
Well, for every 6 guys that go out, but again, it's all the only reason I'm very interested in just having a national wide search is just to see who would put in, and if you get that high level guy, which I think UVA is a desirable program to go to, you get those other guys transferring in. And you know who I want, by the way. But I will caveat, and I should have said this earlier. I do want to see Ron have a good season, but I just don't want to hand him the coaching.
We don't want to give
I don't want to give him the keys to the team right away because, and you can like I said, you can say that he recruited a lot of these guys, but they are still Tony's guys. So I want to see what coaches are out there.
And I'm not far off from that either. Is Carla going to be aggressive enough to poach a guy from another program and bring him to Virginia? Or is she going to have to see who just got fired and who wants to come try to rebuild themselves at Virginia?
Again, I don't want the fired guy. I want the poached guy because I want to see Virginia.
But is Carla going to be able to do that? Is she going to have the ability to draw someone away?
I think she can because Tony Bennett was one of the highest paid basketball coaches active. So the money's there to poach that guy. You know what I mean?
But if you're talking you want big level names, Tony Bennett got big money because he'd been there for 16 years and he won a national championship, won 30-plus games numerous times. I mean, the biggest poaching obviously came from Arkansas stealing Coach Cal from Kentucky, but they wanted him out anyway. He was on the decline. Who else is out there? I mean, they were. From Kentucky standard.
I'm just laughing from a mutual friend, that's all.
Ian's okay with it. He wanted him gone too. But it's who is out there, and it's going to be harder to see. And again, I'm not saying give him. I'm not saying.
If you want a name, I told y'all, I want him.
You want Shaka Smart?
I want Shaka.
I don't know. I mean,
Shaka or Ron, who's been more successful. You know it, Sean. You know that Shaka's been more successful. I
have a bias against VCU.
He'll play an aggressive defense. And I think that you're going to have that. And he's a young coach. And that's another thing. Just a nice young... Not that Ron...
Does he want to come back to the Virginia area?
Sure, he does. He's just a little ways up.
We don't need a name. He has come up in the short list of who would come. They talk about the current VCU coach. I forget his name. But they talk about him being a possibility. Georgetown guy removed himself from being talked. We didn't want him anyway.
Well, you thought... There's a lot of conspiracy. They float out little feelers out there.
It's like a political campaign. They float out a idea and then see how the public takes it, and then if they don't like it, they pop it, and it just goes away. So they talked about the Georgetown guy. I don't think it was too quick anyway to think that they were actually close to any type of deal with anybody. And he was someone who'd just been poached, or he left his alma mater to go to Georgetown, and so... Again, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
My final point is I think if Ron can prove that he can recruit, maybe Carla's going in and talking to the players and be like, hey, what are y'all thoughts on Ron? Do y'all like Ron? Who can he recruit? Has he got the locker room? And it's going to be easy to tell. If he's got the respect of the locker room and everybody's buying into the system, he's adding his wrinkles and making adjustments where he needs to, and they're winning games. I mean, if he wins 25-27 games, gets us top 5 in the ACC, which we were only predicted to be in the top 5 of the ACC, maybe even get ranked by the end of the year, I think you have no choice but to roll with Ron and give him the keys and let him continue to build, and you're going to learn about his recruiting and see if he can land those big recruits, but at least you'll have the bulk of your team there, because ultimately, if no one leaves, we are only filling in 2 spots. So you can have a swing and a miss in recruiting, and when you only need 2.
You are going to have people leave. It's just inevitable.
Yeah, with this day and age. But then can he pull from the transfer portal?
It's going to be the key guys that don't leave. So all those starting 5 guys that we talked about, it's going to be key that they stay. The guys that we talked about that redshirted last year, it's going to be key that they stay. where we want to see replacements is those seniors that are leaving and Rhodey when he leaves, hopefully. But I'm saying that I want UVA to have a successful year. I hope that Ron's successful. I just want to see them open up the candidate pool, and because it is the big reason why is because I think that and last but not least, I just think that Ron is a gamble, even if he is successful. It's like we're gonna push out his success like 3 or 4 years. It's not just 1 year. He has. I'm just worried that if he has this really good team that he's just taking over.
But it's the same thing with like John Shire. John Shire got handed the keys to with no. Did he have any coaching experience?
You can't compare the two. And he had assistant coaching experience, and he had a winning pedigree. But
under who? Coach K.
But what I'm saying is you can't compare Duke to UVA from the perspective that Duke, no matter who's coaching there, is going to always get the players.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you can get a bad name in there and a bad coach, and the word's going to spread. And if the team isn't performing well, so I mean, and it took John Shire a little bit.
But then he would leave. The program's just it may fall back a smidge, but not. It may fall out of the top 10, but it's not.
But
I just don't like. That.
I think it's a similar. I just don't like that story.
I just don't like the comparison. It's always similar from the perspective of an assistant taking over. But again, the Duke's name is bigger than John Shire.
Yeah, I hear that, and I mean he's showing that he can get the recruits. Maybe
because it's Duke.
I mean, maybe Ron Sanchez is the guy, and then he proves everybody wrong, and we get the guys to buy in. They bring in this new system. I'm just saying, you're saying the same thing. We want to give the guy a chance. The only thing is if you remove the interim tag after 3/4 of the season, it gives you the leg up in recruitment because then you solidify who's going to be there. But if you're not sure, then you can say, yeah, Ron's not going to be the guy, and then you go from there. I think it's just scary times ahead if we're not sure if Ron's going to be the guy 3/4 through the year because, it's going to be an overhaul.
It is scary from the perspective of recruitment, but in the same light, we are still a really young team, and that it wouldn't be extremely detrimental with the team if the team retained with the coach that they get. So from that perspective, you still have a little bit of time to recruit. You said it's only 2 spots, so.
But that's also not backfilling anybody who transfers, because anytime a coach leaves, you're going to have some folks.
I already prefaced that is that if the core of the team remains. So, you know what I mean? Like I think if you get a good name coach, the core of the team is going to remain, and you still will get those. You might miss a little bit of recruiting, but you still may snag a couple guys out of the transfer portal just to get you over that hump if you're a good enough name.
I don't want to see us behind the 8 ball when it comes to recruiting and getting a leg on next year.
But I don't want to see us behind the 8 ball 4 years from now when Ron got the job and is slowly deteriorated as opposed to rapidly deteriorated.
You give them time to fix it as well.
But the job is less desirable. I just want to see the team succeed.
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, well, yes, I want to see Virginia basketball succeed. I want us to be back into the same light where we had the 2019 team.
Do you think we're better than last year?
Oh, I mean, I look at this roster and I see depth and I see players who can shoot the ball and I see the transfers that we got in. We got athleticism. We did the same thing when we were prepping for football. We see the roster and like on paper, we should be really good. It's just going to be how this basketball team gels together because on paper, we have a very strong team. And I think we got disrespected by not receiving any votes in the top 25.
That might be good for us in the long run.
Yeah, I like the underdog role. We thrive in that because we know we always get high rankings and then sometimes we get popped in the mouth. So we got a few trends we got to break this year. We need to break the first round exits in postseason. So if we can make that happen.
Definitely expecting business as usual, and I'm not expecting a drop off. And, it's weird when you do this, like, because I've never done this before where you just really look at it that in depth. It is hard to, sometimes I feel like as we're talking about this that I've got the blinders on a little bit because I'm not really paying attention. I mean, obviously, that Duke and UNC are going to be good, but I haven't really paid attention because I'm sure there's fans of other ACC teams. They're just more familiar with their team's rosters and how good they actually are. So, but again, I just see a lot of great tools that I think that if they can all culminate together that they can be really successful this year.
It's going to be an exciting year, and I think we're both looking forward to it.
I was just kind of with Ron. One thing about him, as they're trying to do a kind of a change in offensive culture, I'm just hoping that when there's going to be some growing pains with that, and I'm hoping that when it hits the wall, that they don't maybe revert back to. That's going to be the question, if they revert back to the older system.
Which I think is going to be harder to do. But, I mean, I think you got to just fully buy in. Again, if it's going to be a more explosive offense and people are going to get to do more, we don't know what it's going to look like. So we got that first game on Wednesday that we'll really get to see how this new program shakes out.
And I know one of the points on here is successful season. I will be disappointed if we're not in the top 4 in the ACC.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at this roster and the scores and who we brought in and the only subtractions we've had, I think we're in a good spot. So top 4, I'm there. Top 5 is what I called for in the ACC. So, Ben, I want to pose a question to you. Clearly, there's been 2 secret scrimmages. We played VCU, and we got absolutely waxed, allegedly. And then we also played Georgetown.
Fake news.
And we didn't do well. We lost 2 of those games. Now, these secret scrimmages are something new that's been people like to leak the scores out on the Twitter or X and get a bunch of views. Do you take anything from the scores of secret scrimmages, or do you just kind of say it's guys just getting together playing pickup basketball?
I don't put a ton of stock into it. So, I mean, there was a secret scrimmage last year. I believe we beat
UConn.
We beat the national champions. I mean, what is the purpose of a scrimmage? It's really just to kind of
run your sets,
show your guys, work on things. You're going to focus on the things that you do weak in a scrimmage. I mean, how many times with Coach Rod did I have to run the same thing? But it was always something. I mean, you're going to run your weak stuff. You're not going to run your best stuff to try to improve on it. So they're going to throw the stuff that they need to work on out there. They're going to throw out a bunch of different lineups to kind of see what they. It's just, to me, it's not really.
The score doesn't matter.
And then when you play like a team like VCU, and this is just purely perspective, I think probably they were out there trying to win.
Yeah, I agree. So my take on these are...
And also the Georgetown game was much closer, if I recall.
Correct. And we also, some of our starters didn't even play in some of these.
And also Georgetown was probably a little later in the coaching change too. So
correct.
Just
VCU was less than 48 hours after.
A little things have kind of settled out.
We're in agreement so that they mean nothing. What bothers me is when you look on X and someone posts a score and then everyone's like, oh, Tony knew. The slander against Tony Bennett after seeing a secret scrimmage score was just absolutely bananas, how people could go out there and say, oh, Tony Bennett knew and this is why he left. Oh, he saw the writing on the wall and he had to get out of there. Oh, here we go again. The program is down the tubes. People need to, again, look at this as a scrimmage. And it was there to get some playing time, get some of our younger guys up to the college level speed and how things work. I put no stock in it because clearly there was rumors and reports that we beat UConn last year handily. So, and they went on to win the national championship. I put no stock into it, just like you. So I agree.
So just as to wrap this up, with basketball, it's going to be a little bit different than football. There's a ton of basketball games, much different. So you probably won't hear from us as frequently if you're a weekly listener. So
we're gonna have the football.
We're gonna finish out football as every week. But follow us
once football's over. It's going to be determined, possibly twice a month or so, every other week.
Yeah,
we're going to try to put something out there.
The best
for y'all.
thing that you can do is follow us at Cardiac Who's for when we're about to push out a new episode. Again, you should be excited about basketball season, and I hope that you watch and are supportive, regardless of who you want as a coach. But just be supportive of this team. I think that ultimately you should just want to see the program succeed. Who cares if it's this coach or that coach? At the end of the day, all that matters is the wins column. So go Who's.
Go Who's.